MIT's Initiative on Combating Systemic Racism, ICSR, is an effort jointly led by the Institute for Data Systems and Society and the Sociotechnical Systems Research Center. ICSR's mission is to identify and overcome racial discrimination in the US.
Any one body of knowledge cannot solve this problem because it doesn't have one origin. When the ICSR was formed, we were responding to the national and eventually international upheaval following the murder of George Floyd. It prompted all of us to think very deeply about systemic racism and the ways in which we at MIT could use our particular skills to help understand it.
So ICSR is a unique initiative that we launched at MIT, particularly to answer some of the difficult questions about how racism results from interactions of multiple systems. So we're not really focused on prejudice, but rather how technology, how education, how various institutions result in racism. That's what we call systemic racism. The main thing that we were doing is to take advantage of the abundance of data that exists today to build these sort of interactions, to kind of be able to trace an event from A to Z and understand what actually caused that particular event. We call that causal inference.
The faculty objective is to work on an array of different societal aspects of systemic racism. So we have created a set of verticals that are of interest, including policing, housing, healthcare, and social media, among others.
So the policing vertical started with this one simple but really challenging, difficult, and a fundamental question. Can we utilize all sorts of information and data that's available out there to understand what is the role that things such as race plays in different decisions that are made in the criminal justice system? Computing has a huge role to play here.
I don't want to see people have a higher likelihood of entering the incarceration system just because of the color of their skin. Like, that's not right. I'm working on a database project where I'm pulling together dispatcher information, criminal sentencing data, as well as police records, and creating a database so that researchers can access this information to do any sort of criminal justice related research.
We start from the 911 call and we move towards the further stages of the system. We want to stitch the data sets together so that we have a more comprehensive and holistic view about the law enforcement systems. We try to understand the causal effect of race in this multi-stage process. So we asked the counterfactual question, had a person being of a different race, would she or him be treated differently by the criminal justice system?
The hope of this project is that researchers will use the information that we put in the database to advance racial justice in the world, in the municipalities that they exist.
There's been a lot of news recently about how social media serves different types of content to different people, whether it's through predatory advertising or thinking about the emergence of white nationalism. But there's not a ton of research so far on why exactly that's happening. In our vertical, we're trying to get a better sense of why that's happening through exploring user behavior, variations in user behavior, and how those variations may affect what types of content people are seeing.
If a user watches a particular video or a sequence of videos, do they then get served another video that's maybe more extreme? Really trying to do high quality work and understand how the algorithms on these platforms are operating and how they work to push harmful content to users. We hope that this will not only influence the scientific community and sort of advance the state of knowledge there, but there's also an element of wanting to help the platforms themselves and maybe even policymakers too, as they sort of navigate this world of, balancing rights to things like free speech with sort of protecting people from these hate groups that seem to be springing up.
So this vertical is one that looks at the potential of technologies that combine the imagination with the physical world, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, but also artificial intelligence-based media and more to address the issue of systemic racism and other forms of discrimination.
Games and immersive environments can be very powerful and provide a safe space for individuals to engage with and learn about issues related to race. We recently published On the Plane, which is a role-playing game that simulates the travel experience of a Muslim American woman who wears a hijab. The experience is designed to provide a window into the struggles Muslim American women face because of their outfit and the stigma around being a Muslim in the US. Research shows that many issues that stoke conflicts, such as racism and bias, do emanate from a failure to understand the perspective of others. In terms of our ideal outcomes, we aspire for our research to generate practical outcomes to contribute to social justice and to promote anti-racist behavior both in physical and virtual worlds.
Within the healthcare vertical, our goal is to use techniques like machine learning, algorithms, AI, to try to understand the gaps that exist in human processes in healthcare. And once they're audited and we've identified them, see whether technology can be useful for addressing some of those gaps and perhaps making the system better overall.
Bias in healthcare systems can arise in both systematic and implicit ways. Based on demographic factors such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. The bias can lead to some important social consequences, including misdiagnosis and inadequate treatment for the marginalized population.
A recent paper that we have worked on that I thought was really interesting was trying to identify what are the signals in somebody's clinical note that allow a machine learning model to figure out what their self-reported race might be. And it turns out that there are clues that are obvious to a machine learning model that are not obvious to human doctors who we evaluated. And a goal there might be, if it's so obvious to a machine learning model what your self-reported identity is, then perhaps there are ways that we can talk to care staff as they are making notes and let them know that the way they're speaking about different patients is different and there are better ways of bringing a standard of care there.
Housing is one of those issues that undergirds all aspects of both individual and community wellness. So housing security is essential for other things like food security, for having educational access and attaining high levels of education, for holding down a job and staying employed. If we can start to address racial disparities and racial justice in housing, by extension, we will address all of these other factors of individual and community wellness.
We are applying the modern tools of statistics and causal inference to first identify mechanisms that drive racial disparities and racial bias in housing. And second, we are taking that knowledge to design policies that can disrupt those mechanisms.
I'm an organizer and a researcher with the Camfield Participatory Action Research Project in Roxbury, Lower Roxbury, Boston, at a housing estate where we work with the Tenants Association at this housing development. Camfield Estates is an oasis of affordability in what is like a sea of gentrification in Boston. Participants are heavily involved in the actual production of information and data. That also leads to that data being used for tangible action afterwards. If we're able to help Camfield and accomplish the goals of the tenants and help it remain as an oasis of affordability, as I said, then I think our jobs as like organizers has been completed.
Having that local context and those local partners are really essential to coming up with solutions.
I think that computing can be the glue that connects an understanding of data and data science while pulling together experts in other disciplines. When we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically at an institution like MIT, we think about it from the perspective of the lived experience of the individuals in our community, but also from the aspect of research and how research can inform what happens here at MIT and beyond. I think that the ICSR is unique because it understands that an interdisciplinary approach is really important to solving problems.
The challenge and really the wonder of this project and its excitement has been to bring together different bodies of knowledge, different domains of knowledge, all to bear on solving this larger problem of systemic racism within the particular verticals that we've identified. We want to be in the mix, helping to make a better world, and this allows us to do that in a uniquely MIT way, and one where we focus specifically on thinking about systemic racism. I'm looking forward to seeing what our solutions are, and to the degree that our country is interested in evidence-based policies, we can help provide that evidence.